What's up? It's your girl AB, and welcome to 2026. New year, new opportunities, new motivation, new goals. Same old you, unless you put in the work to change, right? So almost a year ago exactly, I experienced one of the most traumatic events of my life. And I have spent the last year re-understanding what healing is. I have had to heal through other traumatic things in my life. I have had to do a lot of soul searching throughout my life, but this brought things to a new level for me. And so we're going to cover the initial stages of grief and healing after a traumatic event. So the evening of January 3rd, 2025, I was preparing for a peaceful evening in. I had taken a good shower. I was all lotioned down. My house was clean. I had the candles on. I was reading. I was journaling. I was going through some text messages. I think I had the TV on in the background, but I wasn't even watching it. The volume was down. The music was on, playing softly in the background, when I received a FaceTime or a video call from one of my really good friends who I considered a sister. And it was a call to a group chat, which we were all in. There was multiple people who was in that group chat, and I was the first to answer the call. And then one of my other girls answered the call as well. And during that call, our dear friend and our sister ended her life. And witnessing that and feeling so far away and so helpless, it still brings about emotions that I can't even fully articulate. What I have learned over the last year is that healing does not come in keeping yourself busy. Healing does not come in putting a Band-Aid on. Healing does not come in distracting yourself. Healing comes in stillness. Healing comes in silence. Healing comes in solitude. Healing comes in the uncomfortable space when you are alone with yourself and you have nothing to do but feel your feelings. You have to feel in order to heal. So, if you have been through anything traumatic, or if you're in a process of trying to heal from something or from a lot of things, I want to say that I'm here with you to heal with you. And I want to talk about some of the things that are completely normal and natural to experience after a traumatic event or as you start your healing process. Now, I'd just like to say, if you're new here, my name is Amber. I am a multi-hyphenate, do-everythinger. I am a former teen mom, a young grandmother, a mother who has loved my children unconditionally through everything, including my daughter who has battled addiction. I've adopted my granddaughter. I have multiple businesses, but my passion is in pouring in others and helping others find their purpose and walking in their purpose. I've been extremely comfortable sharing my life on Facebook. I've been extremely comfortable building a platform on TikTok and sharing my life there, but YouTube has been different for me. So this is something I am challenging myself to do this year, and I invite you all along to grow with me as I try to pour into YouTube community the way that I have the other communities. And I just want to thank y'all for being here. So like, subscribe, all of those things, and let's get into it. Okay, so what is a traumatic experience? A traumatic experience is essentially a shock to your emotional system that can cause a lot of physical, psychological, and behavioral changes. It is something that can rewire you in the way that your body responds to life. One of the first common and completely normal reactions to trauma is experiencing any sort of negative emotion. Obviously sadness, but what about anger, fear, even guilt? Any sort of negative emotion is completely normal to have. You might be angry at the situation. You might be angry at the person that it involves. Completely normal to have those negative emotions, but you don't want to get stuck in those negative emotions. So of course you feel negative emotions around a traumatic event, but what if you're just driving in your car one day and you suddenly feel angry? You suddenly feel guilty. What if you are getting ready for bed, completely peaceful, nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden you have a sense of rage, completely normal. Sometimes experiencing a traumatic event can bring about a ton of negative emotions that will pop up at any given time without warning. Another common reaction to trauma is re-experiencing that trauma. Re-experiencing the trauma is something that I have dealt with extensively, especially in the first 3 to 4 months after the event. I lived in that phone call. I would go back to that phone call unintentionally all the time, finding myself trying to change the course of events, trying to change reality, trying to will something else to happen than what happened. I didn't want to believe. It's like I had to try to relive that phone call to hope that there was a different outcome, but it was always the same. And re-experiencing that trauma, I put myself in a million different situations and thought about all of the things that I could have done, should have done. What if I did this? What if I did that? What if I didn't answer? What if I didn't? Everything. It's completely normal, but it was re-traumatizing me. Every time I went back to that phone call, I would get panicky. I couldn't breathe. I would have all of these physical sensations. Another way that you can re-experience the trauma is through nightmares. And your body and your mind revisiting the trauma is not to further traumatize you. Your body is so shocked that it is trying to understand what happened. It's trying to make sure, did we see that right? Did we feel that right? Did we experience that right? Is that really what happened? Are we sure? Are we sure? Because that was crazy and we're not used to that. Your body is not used to that sense of trauma and it's trying to understand it. It's completely normal. Another common reaction to trauma is increased arousal, not like sexual arousal, but arousal that if you hear a loud noise, you jump. Your body is in a constant state of fight or flight. You often, even unintentionally or subconsciously, see the world filled with danger. So you are constantly ready to run, ready to fight, ready to flight, ready to... It is completely normal to feel a little more jumpy after experiencing a traumatic event. And there's no timeline on this. It might take weeks, months, years. The worst of it is usually during the first 3 to 4 months after a traumatic event, but it can last forever. Another common response to trauma is avoidance. You could be avoiding people. You could be avoiding doing things like, say, for instance, if your trauma is a car accident, you might avoid ever wanting to ride in a car. If your trauma was getting bit by a dog, maybe you avoid being anywhere near dogs. It's completely normal to avoid things that remind you of that trauma. Or it might be, for me, my whole friend group that this occurred in is in Atlanta. And outside of the funeral, I haven't been back to Atlanta since. I have very strong feelings about wanting to avoid going to Atlanta. I removed myself from the group chats with the girls. I removed myself from being part of that group. And that is a way that that's something I needed to do in order to heal. I had to give myself space from that. And I understand that I have to revisit that because I can't avoid it forever. And I do need to deal with it. But it's completely normal to avoid things that put you back in that traumatic state. Another common reaction is just being angry and irritable. Things pissing you off left and right. It's normal. It's normal to be, as I said earlier, jumpy, to be angry, to be irritable, for small things to just irritate you for no reason. Another common response is feeling guilty or even having shame. Shame if something happened to you. Embarrassed. It's normal to feel guilty, feel like, in my situation, I think back all the things I coulda, shoulda, woulda did. And feeling guilt as if I somehow am responsible for the decision that she made. I don't know if that'll ever go away. And it's something I've had to learn to deal with. But it's completely normal. Obviously, after a traumatic event, another common way to feel is depressed or extreme grief. Grieving the loss of someone. Grieving the loss of who you were before this happened to you. That's something I struggled heavily with. I was angry and I grieved so hard for the me that existed before that moment. I wanted so badly to go back to that version of myself before I had seen and experienced that. That was a huge, huge part of me grieving and healing, was grieving myself. And that's normal. It's completely normal to grieve the version of you that existed before that traumatic event. It's completely normal to feel shameful for something that happened to you that was not your fault. And obviously depression, like, yeah, sometimes you have a lot of nasty, ugly, depressive thoughts and you don't have the ambition or motivation to get up in the morning and shower and do your hair, put makeup on. You don't want to talk to people. You don't feel like working. You're confused. You have brain fog. These are all very normal things that happen after a traumatic event. The world doesn't stop to give you grace and give you a minute to catch up with the pace of the world. It expects you to go on because it's going on, but sometimes you just need a minute to sit with yourself, to feel all of your feels. The world doesn't give you that time, but you have to carve that time out for yourself in order to heal properly. After a traumatic event, it's very normal to have a distorted sense of self-image or of others, of your view of others. Well, that person went through what I went through and they're fine. Why am I taking this so hard? Well, that person was affected greater by this tragedy or by this trauma. Why am I having such a hard time with it? You look at yourself and you wonder, why am I feeling this way? Why am I handling it like this? You might even say, why did this happen to me? If I wasn't so stupid, if I wasn't so this, if I wasn't so that, it wouldn't have happened. If I would have done this, if I would have done that. It's completely normal to look at yourself and look at others differently after a traumatic event. A common reaction to experiencing a traumatic event is wanting to disassociate by feeding into drug use, alcohol use, or whatever other addiction or habits you may have that could get out of control. Because you want to distract yourself. You want to do things that will make you forget the pain. You want to do things that will make you feel good, feel happy, feel feelings again, because maybe you can't feel anything at all and you want to feel something. Maybe you feel too much and you want to feel nothing. It's completely normal to have the desire to want to do that, but you can't stop yourself from the natural process. You only delay it. And while you're delaying it, it builds and it grows and it becomes harder to heal later. It's completely normal for one of these reactions to feed into another reaction. Say you have a negative feeling, which leads into arousal. So now you're jumpy, which leads into a flashback, which leads into you being irritable and then depressed. And you spiral and you go through this hamster wheel of all of these responses to the trauma. It's completely normal. There's no linear process for healing. There's no one way to grieve. They say there's, all these different stages of grief and all of that. They don't happen one in a row. They don't happen, this one's for a week, this one's for a week. No, you bounce between stages and it's completely normal. And I know you've heard me say that a million times, but I'm gonna say it again, it's completely normal. Whatever your healing and grieving process looks like is normal for you. I'm here to let you know that you're not in it alone and that there are healthy ways to grieve and healthy ways to heal. And I'm here to do it with you, if you'll allow me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll come back and watch again and again. The next video, I want to talk more about all of the different emotions we have, where they come from, and how we can carve out time to feel them so that they don't demand to be felt at an inopportune time for us. Because Lord knows, we're busy. We have things to do. And the last thing we need is to be going about life beautifully, and then all of a sudden, we have a panic attack. All of a sudden, we have a psychotic break. All of a sudden, we get this depressive episode we can't get out of. We don't have time for that. You can get ahead of it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thank y'all so much.